Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club, the place investors go to gain actionable advice, learn about current market trends, and hear war stories from other professional investors out there in the field today. Before we get started, I have two quick housekeeping items to cover. First, if you like the episode, we would very much appreciate a like, subscribe, and share. It is the best way to support the show and keep it running. Second, if you are a new investor looking to get started in real estate or an experienced investor looking to take your investing to the next level, we created an ebook for you that will cover how to find deals that are actually deals, how to finance those deals with little to no money down, and how to exit those deals for maximum value. On top of that, I throw in an insane amount of free bonuses that you'll have access to once you buy the ebook. All we charge is our admin cost to keep the show running. So, if you're serious about real estate investing and want to create both active and passive income as an investor, head on over to the website at therealestateinvestingclub.com and click on the button that says Get the ebook to grab yourself a copy today. So with that said, let's dive right in. Today we have a very special guest with us, ready to drop some investor knowledge on you. So buckle up, grab your pen and paper, and enjoy the ride. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. Today we have Lou Brown with us from Street Smart Investor. Lou has been investing since 1976. So Lou is a true OG real estate investor. We are very excited to have him on the show. Lou, thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, baby. I love that, Gabe. Yeah, I embrace that. I have been in the business for over 40 years, buying, holding, and selling property. I love the business. I can't find anything better than this, and I've been doing it ever since.
Nice, man. Well, I'm super excited to have you on here because anybody who's been in it as long as you have, you have as much wisdom as the world can give you. So I'm glad you're here to share it with us.
Well, Gabe, I'm going into my fifth real estate cycle right now as we speak, right? We're seeing things crash and burn all over the place. We're seeing agents daily reducing prices all across the country. And this is such an awesome time to be in this business. And of course, I learned a long time ago that you have to get with it and stick with it. And you have to have a business model that actually navigates these ups and downs, because definitely I have discovered, I didn't believe this before, I didn't know this before, but it's absolutely manipulated. You can absolutely guarantee that sooner or later, the ups will become downs and the downs will become ups. And all you got to do is get with it and stick with it.
I love that. That is, that's the only kind of wisdom that you get from being in the business for 40 years. So I'm glad you're here to share that. Before you mentioned cycles, you said 5 of them, that is great. I really want to go into kind of your experience and what you've seen in those 5 cycles. But before we do that, we always start with stories. We like to hear how people got into real estate. You got into it in 1976, which is 10 years before I was born. So I'm sure you got a great story. Why don't you take us back to the very beginning? How did you get into real estate?
Well, it's a fascinating story. I was actually raised extremely poor. I was raised by my mom. She was a single mom. She was a war bride. She came over to this country on the Queen Mary. She had met her American trooper husband. Everything was going to be fantastic. She got here, discovered he was an alcoholic and an abuser. Oof. Then she met my father, her second mistake. So it ended up just being the two of us. And I mean, imagine this. Our dining table was a Samsonite card table that we bought with S&H green stamps, which you probably don't even know what that is.
I don't, but it sounds resourceful.
Back in the day, you used to get stamps when you bought groceries and gas, and you put those in books and you used them as currency to actually buy merchandise. And so we furnished our apartment. It was my job to lick and stick those stamps into the books. And whatever we accumulated enough books, we went to the redemption center and bought something for the apartment. So definitely I've lived a life of not having anything. Yep. But I met my mom's friends, and I called them aunts and uncles, because in this country, I didn't have any aunts, uncles, brothers, cousins, sisters. I didn't have anybody but just my mom's friends. And Aunt Mabel taught me a valuable lesson when I was 8 years old. And she said, I bought the duplex that we live in. And she says, the people on one side were covering enough money or paying enough money to cover the mortgage, and the other money, they didn't have to pay any rent. So
House
it was
hacking existed
fascinating
all
to
the way
me.
back there in the 50s or 60s, so it is not a new phenomenon. I'd like to hear that.
It's so wonderful. And that was in the 60s. And sure enough, that that taught me a valuable lesson. And then over time, she bought the duplex next door and the duplex on the other side and the duplex next door to that. And pretty soon they had 5 duplexes on the same street. And I watched their lifestyle. And every other year, they got a brand new luxury car. Back then it was Cadillac. And they just had a wonderful life. They went on cruises. They went out to the steakhouse every single night. Aunt Mabel didn't like to cook. And, then she bought a brand new house in a brand new subdivision, all brick home on a corner lot. And I said, Aunt Mabel, how did you do this? And she said 2 words that changed my life. She said, accumulate property. And so I took that to heart. I bought my first house when I was 18 years old, and that was the first house I ever lived in. And I invited my mom to be my first tenant. And she paid me $100 a month. And I told her to take the rest of the money and put it towards her debt, because she had crushing debt, 22% interest type stuff. She thought money was something to be spent, and if she didn't have any, she borrowed it and spent it anyway. So I got her in a position that a year and a half later, she was free and clear for the rest of her life. And to me, that proves that anybody can get in this game at any time. And as long as you got enough cash flow, you can disappear debt. You can reset your own self and your own funding and your own lifestyle very quickly. And so I've learned some valuable lessons from that as well. And I just started then accumulating more property. I was with a company. I was moved from Charlotte, North Carolina to Atlanta, Georgia. The company I was with was great. I had company car, all expenses, but I also knew that I needed to shelter my income. So I bought more property. I bought a duplex, was my first outside rental property, let's say. And I used tax benefits to really make a cash flow off that property. One thing led to another. I left that company. 1983, I started doing real estate full time. And I've done it full time ever since then.
Nice. I love to hear that. And it's great to hear people that have, Aunt Mabel's in their life, somebody who really is that kind of inspiration and model for them, to show them the path towards financial success. Because if you don't have somebody in your ear telling you something like, hey, go out and buy some properties, that's going to get you to financial success. It's really hard to see that path. So thank you, Aunt Mabel, wherever you are today.
And Gabe, I like to be people's Uncle Lou, right?
There you
I
go.
just tell them, look, this is what you got to do. This is how you do it. And as long as you put together and work under a business model, you can have an amazing future.
I love it. So I got to ask, one thing that jumped out to me in your story. You bought your first house at 18 years old in 1976. How much did you pay for that first house?
Well, I paid about $33,000, but back then you could buy a house by taking over the existing financing on the property.
Oh, subject to. Okay.
This was pre-subject to. This was actually NENQ, non-escalating, non-qualifying financing. So for $45, you could literally step in, take over someone else's financing. So I had saved up $6,000. I took over their existing financing on that property. And a year and a half later, when I was transferred from Charlotte to Atlanta, I sold that property within 2 days. I made a 37% profit. And I said,
yeah, shake your finger at that.
This is good stuff, man. I love it. And so as a result, they passed that law in 1982. It's called the Garn-St. Germain Federal Depository Institutions Act. And that was taking away my ability to do my taking over existing financing. I really didn't like that. So I read the law and I discovered that 1701 J3 D8 C, way down into the law, I actually found an exemption. When someone places their property in trust for estate planning purposes, the lender, listen to this, is prohibited from calling the loan due. And so I said, yeah, baby, I need to learn about these trusts. And so I became a trust expert. I started studying it way back then, 1983. And I started teaching them in 1980. I started using them in 1983. I started teaching them in 1986. And I've been a user and a teacher of trusts ever since then. And it has changed a lot of people's lives, because that whole thing, like you said, subject to, that was born out of that law and out of the ability to step in, but you got to use trusts to do it safely.
It's interesting timing, because my dad has been ragging on me to put things into a trust. I put all my properties into LLCs, but he's been saying I need to put them into trust. So you're the second one. The second voice in my head saying that.
Once again, your dad is right.
Don't tell him that. Don't tell him that. I want to get more into that, because I do want to understand a little bit more of the benefits of trusts. But before we jump into that, you've mentioned you've been through cycles. So I want to backtrack just a little bit. And you've gone through 5 cycles, and we all know real estate goes through cycles. If you're in it long enough, you're going to see the ups, you're going to see the downs. So what is, we're in a down cycle now. What is the advice that you could give to, new beginning investors who are just getting into it? What is the advice you could give them in the down cycle?
Gabe, one of the big fears that people have is, well, in this declining market, am I paying too much? Am I going to make a wrong move? And my answer is, and what I discovered in the last downturn. Now, back then, I was doing a lot of rehabs. I was buying houses right. I was buying them cheap. I was buying them at auction. It was awesome. And I was doing magnificent rehabs, granite and columns and all kinds of wonderful things, popping out dormers, doing all kinds of amazing stuff. And when they stopped the music, like musical chairs, when they stopped the music and I was left standing with 12 properties on the market, because we were rocking and rolling, man. People were buying houses. They were raising their hand. We love your stuff. Where's your next one? And all of a sudden, and they didn't send us a memo and say, we're not financing anything anymore. They just all of a sudden cut off the music, and you keep rolling thinking everything's fine. You keep accepting contracts from people, and they keep not funding them, and it just kept pushing the ball down the road until I finally realized, hey, this ain't going to happen. And so I flipped the script and I said, I'm going to go find my buyers. I'm going to be the bank for them. And I created a whole new system out of that. It's called the House Monster. And what I do now is find the buyer before I even buy. And I have a process by which we find those buyers. We find out how much they can afford, how much they have to put down, and then we go about finding a property that matches their situation. So out of that, I created a stepped process. We call it the path to home ownership, where we help deserving families, regardless of credit or financial background, to end up with home ownership. So I created this brand called Certified Affordable Housing Provider, where I teach entrepreneurs how to do exactly that. So in their own local markets, they can find those buyers and then go about not only finding a property for them, but actually having them involved in the process of finding the property. So we engage our buyers, and this is throughout the country, by the way. I have licensees in all 50 states that are doing this, and we're having magnificent results from it. Because look, these are folks that otherwise wouldn't be able to qualify for a loan the traditional way. So we're actually working with them, and they join our membership, and then we start looking. We look at their credit, we look at their down payment, look at how much they can afford on a monthly basis. Then we back into a property that'll match their situation.
Interesting. Okay, and you're not dependent on financing. I'm assuming you're giving, or the end you're offering seller financing in order to get these properties sold.
That's right. In fact, I don't see it here, but we have a program called the Path to Home Ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And that program is actually to look at that person and put them into the level that matches their situation right now. So we've got rent, rent to own, owner finance, and cash sale. So sometimes they have good enough credit, good enough down payment, they can actually qualify at our platinum level. If not, that's the gold level. That means they have at least 10% to put down. If not, then they qualify at our silver level, which means they have at least 3.7% to put down. And if not, they qualify at our rent level, which means they have at least 1% to put down as a move-in fee. So all of that is inside of our membership. And as a result of that, we're able to work with that client. And literally our paperwork is designed so we can move up, and move them up till eventually they can get good enough credit, good enough down payment to purchase the home with a brand new loan from the bank.
Nice, man. I love it. And that just goes to show in real estate, it is all about being creative. It doesn't matter what person's situation, you can always make something work. The original conversation we were in was about cycles, and to tying it back to that, you're saying that even when you're down in the bottom cycle, when you're going into the trough, there's still ways to get creative to make those deals work. And it's all about the business model that you apply.
Exactly. And think about it this way, that our people that are moving in, I'm getting a hunk of money when they move in. I'm getting a cash flow on a monthly basis. I'm getting another chunk of money when they actually pay us off. And so we call it bits and pieces and hunks and chunks. So up front, they're paying a $50 membership fee all the way through to we're earning money when they finally do buy the house for all cash, or we take that note that we've created with them, pledge it as collateral and borrow against it, or we sell that note, or we sell a partial off of that note to create cash back to the company. So there's a lot of different ways that we can gen a big, not only profit, but income as well. And so we're looking at the big spectrum. So when we talk about these up and down and sideways markets, this has allowed me to completely navigate that and what I call flatten the curve. So as a result, it doesn't matter whether real estate is going up or down because I'm being driven by my customer, and I call it a customer-driven company. So we're literally creating a customer-driven company.
Nice. I love that. And the cool thing is that model works to an extent in commercial as well. I'm looking to sell a property right now that won't sell with the interest rates that are going on in these markets. But because I can offer something like seller financing, we can make it work for the buyers that are out there. It's all about being creative, and I love to hear that. I'm going to move us on a little bit because, as I mentioned, this is a shorter podcast, and I do want to get to trusts. So let's go back to trusts. Give me first an overview, and then what are the main reasons why someone would want to put their properties into a trust versus just leave them in an LLC like I'm doing?
Gabe, it's one of the most incredible, amazing things in my entire life that I was forced to learn, because remember, they took away my NE and Q loans and I had to go learn about trusts. And what a gift from God. Thank you very much. Because this has about 30 different benefits that you cannot get from any other entity, not a corporation, not an LLC, not a limited partnership. You can only get these benefits from trusts. So I call it privacy, protection, profits, and probate avoidance, the 4 P's of success. And because of this protection model, you're literally able to purchase the properties, get your name off public records in terms of an owner, get your properties out of the one basket. I always laugh when people talk about LLCs because generally speaking, they put all their eggs in one basket. So if tenant falls downstairs, whatever may happen, we've seen all the crazy headlines about decisions that have been made by juries of your peers. Well, you might as well say juries of your non-peers are the ones that are making those decisions. And so as a result, they're going to attack the basket. Forget about you. They're going to attack the basket that's got all the goodies in there, all the equity in there. So what I teach people to do is put each property in its own trust. So it's isolated and insulated from liabilities that may exist with the other properties. And then below that, the beneficial interests are not published on public record. So no one sees who the actual owner is. And by the way, they're not the owner. The trust is the owner of the property. The only thing that the beneficiary gets is an interest in the avails and proceeds which may flow from the property. So as a result, you've isolated the property into the trust, and then whatever falls out the bottom, which means tax benefits as well as income, you get all of that because you're a beneficiary of the trust.
Huh. And so do you, each of my properties, I put them in their own individual LLC. So do you first put it into an LLC and then put that LLC into the trust, or you just completely skip the LLCs? No more LLCs. Okay.
So what happens is with LLCs, you have annual dues, annual fees, and annual tax returns.
Right. Super annoying.
A whole obligation in that world that you do not have with trusts. Trust is a contract. It's a contract between the trustee and the beneficiary. So as a result of it being a contract, you don't have all those obligations. It is not an entity of the state. So LLCs, corporations, and limited partnerships are creations of the state, or what I say, creatures of the state. However, a trust is not. Trusts got here first. Trust came over on the Mayflower. So the concept of trust goes back literally centuries. And so as a result of that, we're able to do things using trust that we cannot do using those other entities.
Interesting. So what, there's got to be a downside. And I'm thinking, we're doing a syndication right now for bigger properties. I'm assuming the benefit of a trust would die off when you're trying to raise capital for other deals.
Not at all. In fact, it's actually a safer place for a lender to be, because not only do they have the individuals that are signing personally on the loan, also they have the access to the property as well. So they still have a lien against the property, and they still have the individuals that signed. So I think a trust is in fact superior to any other type of entity. And I know it's superior in other ways, like probate avoidance, for example. No other entity is going to avoid probate. No other entity, whether it's your own name, an LLC, a corporation, a limited partnership, that's all got to be probated through the court system. However, a trust is different. So that means that if the property is owned by a trust, then the beneficial interests of that trust are going to flow through to the beneficiary. And let's say that you're the primary beneficiary of that trust. At your death, it instantly goes to your successor beneficiary. Instantly, like that. Like the King of England, as soon as Mama died, right? As soon as Queen Elizabeth died, what happened? He instantly became the king. Why? Because that's a trust. Everything the entire British crown owns is in trust. So literally, he was the successor beneficiary. The instant of her death, boom, he takes over everything, the entire realm, everything that they owned.
Before we continue on with today's guest, I want to tell you guys about a community I'm launching on School to help investors like yourself grow your own portfolio. In this community, you'll get access to all the docs I use, all the systems I've built, everything I've used to grow my own portfolio, as well as instructions and guidance on how to get out there and find great deals, how to finance those deals, and then how to manage them for great returns. Since we're just launching it, the price will be set at a measly $20 per month, and whatever price you join at is the price you'll have for life. We will be increasing the price as the group grows, so if you're at all interested in growing your portfolio along other investors, now is the time to join. I will put the link somewhere in the bio or on our podcast website at therealestateinvestingclub.com, so if you are interested, head on over there. With that said, let's get back to the podcast. That is interesting. So there you go. You learn something new every day. My dad was telling me earlier I need to do it, but you've definitely you're the what's the phrase? The straw that broke the camel's back. I'm definitely gonna have to look further into this.
Well, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
There you go. There you go.
So what happens is that I teach you about land trust, personal property trust, and something called the elite trust, which is an amazing tax vehicle in addition to being an amazing entity that can pass on from generation to generation to generation. It's quite wonderful and very hidden from view. It's what the truly wealthy in this country use. And so when you find out about that, your life just completely changes.
Awesome. Well, hey, I'm going to have to send them to your website to learn more about that because we have gone through our allotted time here. I got to move us on to the quick question round. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Sounds good. It starts with books. I'm a big bookie, so give me 2 recommendations, one for general life wisdom and one for real estate specific.
Well, general life wisdom. Where would I go there? The Bible.
There you go. Easy peasy.
There is so much wisdom in the Bible. It's literally a tiny, thin little tissue paper because there's so much in there. So I would definitely go there. The second thing is from a real estate standpoint, well, let's say a business standpoint, it's Traction from Gino Wickman. And definitely getting if you want to scale, if you want to do more properties, if you want to expand, you really need to understand how to have a team and what to do with that team and who's going to take the rock, so to speak, and be responsible.
Nice. Well, I like that the title. Traction is something that, once you get it, once you get that momentum, you really, the doors start to open and you can see the horizon. But it's really hard to get to that point. So it sounds like a book that I would like. Moving on to the next question. This is for your younger self. So if you could go back to the Lou, who, let's say he was 18 years old, just buying that first property, go to him, look him in the eye, give him one piece of advice moving forward.
I would have gotten a mentor. I would have gotten a coach, somebody who could really have guided me because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was just doing this and that. I knew that I didn't want to go to the bank. I knew I didn't want to qualify for a loan. And I'm true to that to this day. Fast forward 40 years, I've never been to the bank. I've never qualified for a loan, even for my commercial deals. And as a result of learning that I didn't have to go to the bank in the beginning, I've never had to go to the bank since then. I've always used private money financing. I teach people how to raise funding through private money sources. I became a private money source as well for people. So I've loved that, and definitely knowledge is power and money. So knowledge is a great thing to pass on to other folks and say, you can try to wing it, or you can make sure that you actually are guided through the process. You will pay for it one way or the other.
Yep. Having a mentor is so important, especially when it comes to real estate, because it is a complicated world. And if you don't have somebody who can kind of show you the way, it will take a lot longer than you would like it to. And I can speak from my own experience there. This moves us to the next question. This is your Superman strength. We are all gifted with strengths that we uniquely give to this world. So what is your Superman strength?
Oh, man, the ability to multitask. I could do many things at one time. So, other than our time together, I'm often doing many things at the same time. When I leave the house, for example, I'm not going on one journey. I'm doing multiple things in that experience. And I do the same thing throughout the day. I've always got, I run multiple multi-million-dollar companies off that cell phone right there. Yep. And I'm on the run, baby. Wherever I'm going, I'm running the companies at the same time.
I actually, I was talking with an earlier guest who was, more of a, has been in the game longer like yourself. And I was just talking to him. I was like, how did you guys do business before cell phones? It just blows my mind. More power to you.
Oh, more power to you. I mean, it's been an interesting ride to have to previously drive to the courthouse to actually look at a real estate document or to see if that property was encumbered versus click, 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 boom. I've got everything.
Right there.
What about that property right now at my fingertips?
I love it. All right, moves us on to the next question. And you've already touched on this earlier in the episode, but I'm going to ask it anyways. None of us are islands. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. And you've already said mentors are so important to everybody's journey. So who is one mentor who has contributed significantly to your real estate career?
Mr. Jack Miller, way back in the early 80s when I got started. I found him down in Tampa, Florida. He's passed on. He was pretty OG when I got involved with him, and I definitely got great things from him. The problem was he didn't have any paperwork. He would say, that's up to you. So I finally it forced me to start writing courses. And in fact, that's where my trust system came from. So I learned about trust from him, but he didn't have any paperwork. So I had to create it, and I had to go to like 20 different attorneys and put all my trust paperwork together. And it became a system, and now I have people all across the country using it.
Well, there you go. Thank you, Jack Miller, for helping Lou along his journey. That moves us to the very last question. This one is for the listeners. You've given us a lot of good advice, a lot of good wisdom. I'm sure people out there want to reach out and say hi. What is the best way for them to do that?
They can go to streetsmartinvestor.com. Check us out there. Also, happy to give you a free coupon, that is a discount coupon for my book, Buy, Hold, Sell. So I've got an amazing book that I wrote that really takes soup to nuts what I've been teaching you today, and it's really got some great stuff in there. So you can go to, let's see, streetsmartwiz.com/BHS book for Buy, Hold, Sell, BHS book. And that gives you your $5 off coupon as well. But this is chock full, guys. I am not kidding. This is loaded with great stuff that took me 40 years to learn. So welcome. You can enjoy that.
Perfect. And that is streetsmartwiz.com/BHS book. I will put that in the show notes. So if y'all want to reach out to, Lou, go ahead. The
gift I can give is I do have a training, and it's called Wealth Builder Workshop.online. Wealthbuilderworkshop.online. You can go there and join me for a one-day training for $1. How cool is that?
I love it. Wealthbuilderworkshop.online and streetsmartwiz.com. I'll put both those URLs in the show notes. So if you guys want to reach out to Lou, click a little more in the description. It'll pull down the full description, and in there you can find Lou's URLs. All right. Well, hey, Lou, that wraps it up. I really appreciate you hopping on the show.
I'm loving it, Gabe. So great to work with you. Happy to do anything I can to help.
Awesome. And for everybody who's here with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, reach out to me, Gabe's little realestateinvestingclub.com. Other than that, I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. All right, before I officially sign off, I have a quick announcement to make. If you're interested in becoming a passive investor in one of my deals, my own company, Kaizen Properties, is looking for capital partners for our upcoming projects. We invest in what are known as recession-resistant assets, mainly self-storage facilities, mobile home and RV parks, and industrial properties. If you're interested in investing and would like to learn a little bit more about my company, our investing criteria, and some of the previous projects we've done, go to the Real Estate Investing Club podcast at therealestateinvestingclub.com and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. Click on the Invest With Us button. That'll pop up the investor form. Fill that out, and we will reach back out to you as soon as we can. Or if you prefer a little bit more of a personal touch, you can reach out to me at gabe@therealestateinvestingclub.com. So really, that is it. Again, it was a pleasure hanging out with you guys during this episode, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.